This is Helene. Welcome to Virtual Vegfest Live. It has been a hot minute since I've done a Virtual Vegfest Live because we've been on the road. It's super excited to be back here because you are in for a real treat. Because if it's anything like the conversations we've just been having before we were going live, oh my goodness. Hopefully, you are all ready to have your comments and questions ready because this is a COVID panel discussion with Milton Mills and Dr. Judy Brangman and Dawn Hilton-Williams and me. And it's so important that you get vaccinated and the reasons why from two incredible doctors. That's what we have for you today. If you're on the fence, if you're scared, if you have misinformation, because there's so much of it out there, today is your chance to get the correct information from people who have had COVID, working in the field, working with people who have like patients who have COVID pretty much every day. And then communities. Dawn and I work with communities all the time, and we want you to be healthy. So that's why we're part of this too, which is important. So first, let's talk some business. Thank you to TerraSeed for sponsoring Virtual Veg Fest this month and the vegan stew. And did you bring the hummus with Kimberly, which is Fireside Chat with Kimberly, and Wake Up and Yoga. We have so many live things like Virtual Veg Fest stuff live that you can watch weekly. Just go to YouTube and subscribe and you'll just play along and watch. We also have a contest that we do every month where you can win 7 prize packs. Just 7 of them. Really simple to do. Go to virtualveggies.com, click the contest tab, and enter our wish pond where you can go and subscribe and like to our different social media and their social media, Hodo Foods, Crafters Organics, Orgain, Follow Your Heart, Cinnaholic, TerraSeed, and one that I'm completely forgetting right now because I haven't done this in like a month. So just go to virtualveggies.com and enter the contest. Nobody else gives away as many prizes for just basically subscribing to our social media anywhere. So thank you to all those sponsors as well. I want to get us started because we are going to probably stick to a strict 1 hour for this, and it's a ton of information. So let's bring everybody in. And remember, questions or comments, definitely put them in the little box, and we want to address them. We want to hear from you. Let's say hi to Dawn Hilton-Williams. She is in Charlotte, North Carolina now, which is awesome. And then we have Dr. Milton Mills, which is in the Maryland area. And then Judy Brangman. Yay, Judy. She is local. She's probably about 20 minutes from me, which is great. So I don't read bios, but let me throw it at you, Dawn. Tell people who you are, what Urban Eats is, and then we'll go to Judy, then we'll go to Milton, and then we'll start talking about COVID.
Thanks, Helene. Good to be on the panel this evening. My name is Dawn Hilton-Williams, and I am your friendly neighborhood educator. I am a vegan cookbook author and a whole food plant-based nutrition coach in the upstate of South Carolina in the Charlotte area now. And I am all about radicalizing wellness with food in communities that are disproportionately impacted by chronic disease. We do a lot of work with coaching, demos, cooking, teaching, vegucating. I'm all about vegucation. And I have a cookbook that teaches you how to learn how to change your life by changing what you put at the end of your fork. And that's basically it.
Awesome. Dr. Judy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Judy Brangman. I'm an internal medicine physician, lifestyle medicine physician. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, working as a hospitalist. And I'm a social media influencer. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and I, through my platforms, online events and webinars, teach and encourage people about the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet.
Awesome. Milton.
Hello, I'm Dr. Milton Mills. I am internal medicine, critical care doctor living in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I also do a lot of plant-based education because there is no question but that the vast majority of disease that we see in the United States and other Western countries is directly related to the foods that most of us eat. And one of the interesting things about our conversation tonight is we're going to talk about how even infectious processes like COVID and the flu and other communicable diseases can be directly impacted by our diet for better or for worse.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being able to do this. And hi, Susan, thank you for joining us and watching. This is such an important conversation, such an important topic. And it almost feels like the words conversation and topic are just too understated for a viral pandemic that has killed 700,000+ people that's recorded, and not necessarily the exact number of people, and also the numbers of who has gotten COVID. Not 100%, because I know multiple people who got COVID are not part of the count because they never tested positive for it. And long haulers, which they now have a name for because nobody knew what they were when they started getting sick in March of 2020 and suddenly didn't get better. And their doctors looked at them like, there's nothing wrong with you. And they were like, yes, there is. And now there's a name for it. So, I mean, I guess I can start with, I have a question. I have a couple of questions about, because Dr. Milton, you travel a lot on planes. And I'm going to go on a plane for the first time in a few years, a week from today, right? So I have some advice I've been given. Obviously, wear your mask. It's required. But do I wear goggles? Do I wear a face shield? What have you been doing?
Well, that's really interesting because I have been traveling continuously throughout this pandemic, meaning from when it hit last March, all the way through, before we had vaccines, before people really had a good handle on, the best ways to try and stop the spread. I was still traveling because, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm just kind of reckless and crazy, but I live, as I said, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, but both my parents are still living, but they both live in California. My dad's remarried. My mom is not. My father turned 88 in July, and my mother is going to turn 88 on the 24th of November. And so I have to go back and forth frequently to check on them, to, do things to kind of make sure they're okay. So I didn't have a choice about traveling. And from the very beginning, one of the things that I had always understood was the importance of optimizing immune function through diet. So, one, made sure that I was, kind of planted up, in essence, doing my whole food, healthy, plant-based diet, lots of fresh veggies, the green leafies, the cruciferous vegetables, fresh fruits, mushrooms, can't overstate that, regular intake of mushrooms, so that, supplements like D3, vitamin C, selenium, zinc, quercetin, and also doing some elderberry and things like that, so that I had maximum sort of internal protection. And then in addition to that, I absolutely wore a 3-layer surgical mask. I did not feel it necessary to do an N95 mask, which is much more, well, let me say this. In the hospital, if I'm going to a patient's room that I know has COVID, yes, I will put on an N95 mask, because I know I'm going to be in the presence of someone who's actively shedding and typically shedding large amounts of virus. But just for personal protection, just the triple mask. So in answer to your question, as far as using goggles or a face shield, no, never have done it out in public. Did not feel I needed to. And I was fine. Okay. But I absolutely did social distancing. I'm almost reluctant to say I did frequent hand washing, because quite frankly, I always wash my hands. All right. And it's a little disturbing to me to see how what a big thing hand washing has become. I'm like, what in God's name were you people doing before? it's like y'all should have been washing your hands in the first place. So I've with those things, I have been protected. When I got to my mom's house, I would always, before I went and interacted with her, I would wash up, just to make sure that I was cutting down on any carriage, and then as soon as the vaccines were available, I'm not going to say that. As soon as I felt comfortable that the vaccines were safe and effective, I got vaccinated, made sure I got my family vaccinated. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think that if you use good social distancing, effective PPE, and that is all superimposed upon a plant-based lifestyle, that you can feel pretty comfortable that you're going to be okay, and that I don't think you need things like goggles and face shields unless you know you're going to be in the presence of someone who has an active COVID infection.
Okay, well, that's good advice, because you don't necessarily know who's on the plane, but they're supposed to be wearing their masks.
Right.
But also the ventilation systems on the planes actually blow away any ventilation that we have not in the sky. So it's better than what's down here.
Let me say one last thing. And this is, I've done this like probably all my adult life, certainly since I started going to medical school. Anytime I'm within 5 feet of someone, if they cough, I hold my breath for about 30 seconds. I've just always done that because, they're expelling particles. I want those particles to dissipate. I don't want to inhale them. So, and I've been doing that, even with COVID. So that's another little tip I would give people.
When I walk through the crowds at Vegfest, I hold my breath. I walk through and then breathe. Yeah. So yes, I if someone sneezes or so, I'm like,
right. So I sneezes and coughs. Yeah, I'm holding my breath till I get out of the zone.
Hand sanitizer, not near a bathroom.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to add, I was hesitant to travel. I started traveling in November with COVID, and I just did a little research looking online. I did find a couple of studies that showed the transmission of COVID very low on the aircraft, particularly because of the HEPA filtration systems, and a lot of airlines have increased that and improved their filtration. So I think you're probably more likely to get COVID in the grocery store, to be quite honest, than in the airplane. And so initially, the first time I flew, I did wear N95. I had a face shield. I was probably one of the only people that did. But the next time and subsequent times, I just wear a 3-layer surgical mask. I do wipe down all the surfaces. Like when I get to my seat, I wipe it down with my Clorox wipes, my Lysol wipes, and that's about it. And I don't take my mask off on the plane. I don't eat or drink, or try not to eat or drink on the plane. So I haven't gone anywhere where the flight was more than 4 hours, because otherwise I'm gonna need to eat.
Yeah.
That's a very. I'm sorry. Let me just. The fact that the airlines have been very good at wiping down the seats and the plane in between exchanging passengers, and then of course everybody gets that little towelette to further sterilize your personal area. Okay, Dawn, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna. I have driven a lot. It's put me on the road a little bit more. And pre the Pfizer emergency, I went with Moderna, but pre shot, I did the gloves. I did wipes. Very much like Dr. Brangman said there. And I wore a face shield the first time I flew. I only flew twice pre. And I wore a face shield, mask, gloves, took the gloves off. I did the whole thing and I ate what Dr. Mills told me, which was this: I ate raw Brazil nuts. I was taking NAC, and I was like taking D3 like it was nobody's business. So I just was really geared up. And once I got the shot, I just haven't been in a plane, so I didn't have the issue. I was driving. I mean, I wiped, but that's also a misnomer. when you're driving, those gas pumps and those doors, like Dr. Brangman was saying, when you're touching the doors going into a gas station or a QT or the bathroom doors, you have to be cognizant of not touching your face and not touching any open orifices after you do it. And it's so easy to touch that handle and you think it's okay. You can get it on a countertop of it when you at the register. So I'm just real cognizant when I get out of a store. I'm spraying my wheel. Even now, I just spray stuff.
And that brings up something that I really want people to understand, that if you're going to wear gloves, you got to use those gloves properly. In other words,
right.
I see people putting on plastic gloves and they're walking from place to place to place. People have to understand that when you put on a pair of gloves, the minute you touch anything, those gloves are contaminated. So if you're going to wear gloves, you got to do what we do in the hospital, and that is you got to exchange them anytime you move from one area to the other. Otherwise, all you're doing is carrying potentially infectious germs from place to place. You can't put on a pair of gloves and then just, go out and touch the world, because every place you touch, you potentially picking something up. So
right, and then same with food service. You got to keep swiping out. The second you touch another service, you're going through several pair of gloves.
You put your gloves on. You grab the handle. You go in the store, take those gloves off, and put on another pair.
I don't do that now, though. I don't do the gloves now.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying if people want to do gloves, I personally think it's probably easier to do hand sanitizer and do that frequently, because gloves just really are not real practical when you're out moving in the real world, because again, for them to be effective, you got to change them continuous.
Yeah, that was pre. But that was pre. That was pre the shot. That was pre.
Well, I would say even now, because with the Delta variant, people are shedding virus. I mean, I think if you're vaccinated, you're protected. But I'm saying if someone feels they want to wear gloves,
right,
the way to do it is you got to change them continually and frequently for them to be effective. Yep. Otherwise, you're just transferring schmutz from place to place.
Just like your doctors and nurses do in the hospital or your doctor's office. Like that's the lesson from there. But it's a good segue to Judy, because Judy's, one, everyone should know we're all vaccinated on this panel. That's like really important.
Right.
It's not like somebody who's like, no, I'm not, and here's my reasons why. We're all vaccinated. And Judy's vaccinated, but got a breakthrough COVID case. And I don't know if you know where or how that happened, but it's a question that I always want to ask for any type of case, actually. And I know kind of the answer is could be a number.
You were fully vaccinated when you got it?
It was crazy. I don't even understand how I got it, because I test myself regularly because I travel and just because I want to know. So I had 2 negative tests a week and a week and a half to 14 days before I tested positive. So I knew the narrow window of where I contracted it. And I was like, I looked at where I went, and the only places that I went was to the store, grocery stores, hardware store.
Right. Yeah.
And I went to Baltimore. I had to visit a family member in a hospital. So I assumed that I got it in the hospital, that particular hospital. I was not at work within a time frame that it would have made sense. So I don't think that I got it at work. But how it happened was when I came back from Baltimore, I felt extremely tired. And I thought it was because I hadn't slept. And when I was at work, like 3 days later, I was feeling really tired, like brain fog. It's like my brain was like, it was slow to think. And the next day I was going to work and I felt dizzy. And as soon as I got there, my coworker said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm okay." But then I was like, "Nah, I'm really dizzy. Let me go get my vitals checked." So I went over to the nurse's station on the floor. I was like, "Just check my vitals. I think my blood pressure may be a little bit low," or something like that. And then I was tachycardic. My heart rate was like 150. I don't know if you want to hear the whole story. It was kind of crazy. And this is the thing about being a doctor, right? You don't want to be sick. So I was like, "No, I'm good. I just came into the building." They're like, "Ma'am, no, you need to go to the ER." I was like, "No, let me just sit down and let me just try and get my heart rate down. Let me relax. Let me do Valsalva and, simmer down. I'll be good." I sat down for like 10 minutes. The nurses were like so patient, and they called like not a rapid response nurse. They didn't call it rapid, but he's the guy that comes for stuff. So he came and he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna take you downstairs." I was like, "Well, I can't walk down there." So they were like, "Nah, just put you in a wheelchair." And I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be getting sick or feeling sick." So long end of it is that yes, I tested positive. After I dealt with the initial frustration, I was very upset, to be honest, because I have done everything to prevent getting it. I don't socialize. I hadn't been going to church. I hadn't really been going anywhere except work and the stores. And so I've actually had persistent tachycardia for kind of like a month, but they did keep me overnight for like fluids and stuff. I was too dizzy to drive home. I didn't feel comfortable driving back home.
What was your O2 set?
I was never hypoxic.
Okay.
It was normal. I didn't have pneumonia. I didn't have any shortness of breath, but I had everything else. So when you look at it, it's like, okay, I'm young, healthy, not overweight. I don't have any chronic medical problems, plant-based, and I'm actually healthier now than ever. Like I cut out inflammatory foods, like sugars, like no added sugars since COVID. I exercise more regularly than I had before. I increased my vitamin D, vitamin C, lemon, garlic, ginger, and all that stuff. But the only thing that was different from me and other people, I would say, that are young and healthy is that I had the vaccine, because I know other people that had COVID that were not vaccinated, that had pneumonia or that had shortness of breath or that needed oxygen. Now, that doesn't mean that I wasn't miserable for a month. I was miserable for a month. The fatigue was really, really bad, like 2 to 3 weeks where I just was either sleeping a lot or laying on the couch watching TV all day. And for a month, I ate one meal a day. Like I had no appetite. I lost taste, smell. I had a sore throat for a month. And this is the beginning of August. So it's been 3 months now. So I think I'm just now starting to come back to, like normal. But I think the key is that you want to do everything possible not to get this virus. And for me, people argue, okay, well, does the vaccine work? Is it harmful or anything like that? But for me, I had peace in knowing that I did everything in my possible power to try and prevent it and minimize my chances of getting sick. So at that point, whatever the outcome was, I knew it was out of my hands and it was in God's hands. And I think that's one thing that's stuck in my mind when I see my patients that have COVID, that are not vaccinated, that maybe are not healthy. I think sometimes they maybe do have a little bit of regret, like, oh, if I had did this, would my situation be different? But with me, I have peace, and then there's nothing else that I could have done.
Right.
What do you say to the whole food plant-based vegans, or just vegans who are like, my diet's so healthy, I don't need to get vaccinated?
I'll tell you what I say to them. I ask them if they've ever been involved in a rollover car accident. And of course they say, well, no. Then I ask them, do you wear your seatbelt? And they're like, well, yeah. Well, and why? You wear it because you want to maximize your chances of living should you be involved in an accident. And the fact is that neither seatbelts nor airbags nor car crumple safety zones can guarantee you're going to survive an accident if you get involved in one, but they sure as heck maximize your chances of surviving. Mm. And we know that since we have put those safety measures in place, many more people do survive accidents and also come out with less severe injuries and disabilities if they are involved in an accident. And it's the same thing with being vaccinated. That does not necessarily mean, as we've seen, that you won't get the disease, but it definitely means you're much more likely to survive the disease. You will have milder disease, a milder course, so that you don't end up intubated in a hospital or with lungs that are so severely damaged that you end up needing a lung transplant, or you're on chronic oxygen if you survive this disease. So, that's the point, that it does markedly improve your chances of survival. Let me just kind of give a little side story to Judy's. I mentioned that my mom is 88 or 87, going on 88. she has been babysitting for my great nephews, her great great grandchildren, who are 10 and 8, because after they get out of school, their mom's at work and they come by the house until the mom can come pick them up. And after the school year started this year, they, within 2 weeks of starting school, they both came down with severe COVID. They were really sick. Their mother took them to the hospital. They tested positive. They were laid out for several days. And, you know, my mom's one of these old-fashioned Southern women. You know, you walk in the house, she's hugging you, she's kissing you, she's feeding you, da-da-da. Well, within, I would say, a week and a half, my mom developed a cough and a sore throat. And my mother is as stubborn as a mule, because I'm in Virginia, she's in Oakland. I'm screaming, you need to go to the hospital. And she's like, I'm not going down there and sit in the emergency room with all those people. Make a long story short, her symptoms abated after about 72 to 96 hours, 3 to 4 days. She was better. She never got sick enough that she had to be hospitalized or even went to the hospital. Oh, and during that bout, she also had some diarrhea. All of these things are symptoms of COVID. So even though she stubbornly refused to go get tested, I'm sure that she did catch it from them, but because she was vaccinated, she survived and actually did really well considering. And if she hadn't, my mom would probably be dead, you know, because she's got chronic health issues. And as I said, she is 88. But I'm just like, thank God she's vaccinated, because I still have my stubborn, hard-headed, won't listen to me mama. So the vaccines absolutely work.
Well,
and I was going to say, oh, go ahead, Dawn.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll do after you.
I was going to say, like, I get the hesitancy, especially initially. Maybe not now, because the vaccine's been out for a longer time. But I didn't go get it when it was first available. It first was available to me in January, or December, I think. So I waited a month after all my colleagues had gotten it, all my Instagram doctors had gotten it, and I got it the end of January. And I read the original study that's in New England Journal of Medicine. I was like, my goodness, this study is phenomenal. 30,000 in one study and then 40,000 people in the other. The largest vaccine trials that you will find. Other vaccines that we've had that are around longer did not have that worldwide effort collectively, everyone putting together their money and their resources to come up with a vaccine quickly. So that's why the vaccine was able to be produced so fast. Some people don't really understand how research works. A large portion of research is recruitment of people in these studies. But because of the urgency of it, people were signing up for this left, right, and center. Some of my colleagues are in the study. So people were signing up for this quickly. Governments, wealthy people were donating billions and millions of dollars to this research, which is another factor that can hinder research sometimes, money and recruitment. So I just wanted to put that out there for the people who say that the vaccine was produced too quickly. It was produced quickly, but there's logical reasons why. And then also the research that they were using, mRNA, is based on previous research of mRNA for other conditions like cancers and autoimmune conditions. So it's not something that they just discovered this year.
Right. So what I was going to add to the question that, I'm sorry, Judy, were you done?
Mm-hmm.
Did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
No, I was done.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I said, there are two different groups. There are the groups of plant-based folk or vegans who are just thinking that all this the politicizing of the vaccine has hurt us on both parties. It's been too politicized. And then we have to deal with the lack of interest in getting real evidence-based science and the lack of belief in science. We've lost a lot of credibility with science, even though science is the foundation for what we go to the hospital for every other thing except for this. right? So we have those vegans and those plant-based folks who are anti the shot, but then we have the people in the community that I see every day that have a real distrust for healthcare, and because of systemic oppression, the things that have happened systemically over time. So there is a lot of miseducation, and there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of distrust in the communities of color because of things that have happened in the past. And we've got to do a better job of having counterpoints to take those thoughts away from community. And as far as plant-based, plant-based folks, they have the information. You just have to make sure they have the facts. And if they choose not to get it, and I just think that when you choose not to get the shot, don't go to the hospital and shed and risk lives of medical practitioners who are out there risking their lives every day, are everyday heroes. Don't go risk the lives if you choose not to get the shot. Don't go in the hospital and potentially risk the lives of Judy and Milton and other great heroes and nurses and folks at the hospital. But I just think you have to have a counterpoint to all the arguments that have happened in the past, the long-term effects, talking about the historic inequities, and address those things head on. Mm-hmm. You've got to go out there and you've got to talk about Henrietta Lacks. You've got to knock down the Tuskegee thing, because it's not the same thing as Tuskegee. It's not at all like Tuskegee. But we've got to go out there and have those conversations in communities. We have to go into the communities, have those conversations in town halls and in forums like this, where we can get that information out so that we have trusted folks that look like the people we're trying to reach, telling you why you should take it, which is why Helene convened us today.
All right, let me speak to that, because I want to talk about my own hesitancy. So the first vaccination started occurring last November. And at the time people started being vaccinated in this country, worldwide, we were maybe somewhere around 100,000 people had received the vaccine. But at that point, the longest period of time that had elapsed since the first people were vaccinated was maybe a couple of months. Mm-hmm. So because this was a relatively new application of mRNA techniques to vaccine therapies, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. And because the Trump administration was involved, I had my eyebrow raised, like, okay, let me see what happens. So I made up in my mind, I'm going to wait until several million people have been vaccinated around the world. That way, that's enough variation in the vaccinated pool that I know that if there's a likelihood that certain individuals will start to have untoward side effects, it's going to come out. But I also wanted to wait till at least 6 months had elapsed, because we know that in the history of vaccines, there has been no late presenting side effect or syndromes related to a vaccine that have occurred after 8 to 12 weeks, which is really like 3 months. So I knew by 6 months, look, if we haven't started to see, people growing an extra head or, falling out in the middle of the street, that these things are safe. By that point, so by March of this year, it had been well over 6 months. We had several million people in this country alone, and many millions more around the world who have been vaccinated. As Judy said, all of my colleagues have been vaccinated, and they were fine. I'm like, okay, the studies, the research, again, as you said, the studies show that it's safe. My real world experience looking at people who have been vaccinated and how they've done shows that it's safe. I then went and got vaccinated. And once I was fully vaccinated and I was fine, that's when I told people, you need to be vaccinated, because I can testify from my own experience that it's safe and it's effective and you have nothing to fear. And yes, I grew up in the inner city, poor, had Medicaid as a kid, got treated like crap when we went to the hospital or doctor's office, because they looked at us like, oh, you're here with this welfare insurance. Even at working in a hospital to this day, I oftentimes see my colleagues treating people of color in ways that are less, I wouldn't consider appropriate. And I know there's some effect based on that person's ethnicity and background. So I know that there are those endemic and systemic problems within the medical care. But that's where me and Judy come in, because we are African American. We are fully educated and experienced in this issue and the science behind it. And it's just like if I have a part of my roof collapse and I hire a reputable contractor and he comes in and says, Dr. Mills, you not only need to replace the part that's collapsed, but several of the beams adjacent to it have wood rot. You got to pull those out and replace the whole thing so that it's stable. He's an expert. I'm going to take his word for it, and I'm going to trust him so that I know that I'm safe, because
Right.
I'm not a contractor. When I'm on an airplane, the pilot says, sit your butt down and put the seatbelt on because we about to hit turbulence. I don't go dancing down the aisle saying, I don't think you know what you're talking about. Because, he's in the cockpit. He knows what's happening. That's us. We're in the cockpit. We're trained. We know what's happening. And it doesn't matter if you don't understand it. That's where you need to trust us, that we're going to tell you the truth. We have your best interest at heart. We're not going to mislead you. And we are telling you, you need to take these vaccines because it's going to save your life. And yes, you need to be plant-based. You need to, eat as much raw food as you possibly can, but you also need to be vaccinated, period.
I think that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Judy.
I was just going to say about the analogy about the pilot. It's almost like we're in a twilight zone. There are people that are not experts, have no science background, and are so confident. And I'm not even that confident in, immunology or research. I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a researcher. I do read journal articles, but I wouldn't even say I'm an expert at it. But the general public does not read journal articles. It's a skill that you have to be trained to learn how to analyze the data, not just reading the abstract and the conclusion in the discussion, but analyzing the data, the tables. Most people don't even know how to do that. And I don't expect them to, but somehow they're so confident in their conclusions about the vaccine. And I do think it's dangerous. And you have a small percentage of people who are physicians that are against the vaccine. I saw a survey that 95% of doctors are vaccinated. In this survey, it was 95%. All of my colleagues are vaccinated. I only know of one person who is not. But you may find few people that are not vaccinated that are anti-vaccine. And somehow the narrative is being circulated in the community that that's a large portion of the medical community. And it's not. It's a small subset of people who feel that way. Most of us are like, my colleagues are running to go get the booster. They're like, I am not playing around with this virus. I've seen what it does to my patients, my families. I want no parts of it. That's what they're all saying.
Right.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah. I just got to say this because you're right. You sitting up, you're talking to people, you've been to medical school, you've been practicing medicine, you've been treating COVID patients, and then they're going to tell you about something they saw on YouTube. I'm like, are you kidding me? I saw a woman dancing on a plate on YouTube, but that don't mean nothing to me. And it's just, it is just unbelievable. And then the other thing is, like you said, they always want to point to, well, there's this doctor over here. Number one, you've got to look at the preponderance of data. There were lawyers in court trying to tell people that the election was rigged and Trump actually won. Sure. But they were fools, and they're now all losing their law license. The vast majority of people said, this man lost, and he's a quack, and he's a fool, and y'all don't need to be listening to him. So it's the same thing. When 95+% of physicians are vaccinated and telling you this is safe for you, don't point to some outlier and tell me, well, that person over there, because there's a couple of idiots in every bunch, and that includes doctors. And those are not the ones you want to listen to.
Well, you've got VARs. I'm sorry. I love for the VARs. My cousin's uncle's sister got the shot and now has blood clots, or got the shot and died within a week because, or I've read on the VARs thing, which is voluntary, and they have to sift through all these people who just decide I got, I got a paper cut and then I got COVID and then I have these long haul symptoms.
Right.
But as we look at all of that, we have to look at what are we really talking about anyway? We're talking about the root of all these poor immune health people. Everybody that's got poor immune health, the root of it is we're eating death all the time. Communities of color are surrounded by hypersaturation of fast food restaurants. Let's get back to why are we not talking on the news about why these neighborhoods are surrounded by Dollar Generals filled with highly processed food, no vegetables, and then they're not even teaching how to rethink how to eat, because high immune systems reduce risk factors for chronic disease, increase immune health. All these things would change if we get to the root cause. It's the same thing that causes the chronic diseases, which is the same thing as exacerbating this disease with the shot. And if you take, just dig back, it's 95% of people, their doctors don't know about the whole food plant-based, but those who do and are speaking about it, all you do is do the research. People aren't doing research. Judy, Milton, nobody reads. They read the dancing plate lady. Helene, no one watches that. They're on Instagram watching bots. They're on Instagram watching wasteful things. And what we need to do is go out in the community and re-educate, because no one's getting it. It's really about the plate, because it is about the vaccine. But let's get to the root of it. Why do you have high blood pressure? Why do you have hypertensive? Why do you have cardiovascular disease? Why do you have cancer? Because for the most part, outside of those that are congenital, it's degenerative, right? And it's the plate. Let's get back down to grassroots. We need to get out in the community and re-educate, because there's a massive distrust of federal government because of things that have happened. So that's an excuse, right? But now we need to substitute that excuse with going out in the community and touching the community directly. And it's got to be people that look like the community. People like Judy, people like Milton, people like me that you all are at the hospital working. I need to go out there. Helene we need to go out there and really give that information, and then let people taste the food. I hear so many people saying that I couldn't be plant-based. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that because I couldn't sustain it. It's too expensive. There's always some lie that's propagated because corporate is better for corporate. It's better for government. It's better for subsidies, but it's not better for health, right? So there's just a bigger conversation about why all these systemic and endemic problems are plaguing us and not going away. It rolls back to chronic disease.
No, you're right, and I'm sure that's why Helene is doing this forum, and that's why we're here, is to get this information out. But you did touch on something that I cannot let this go without co-signing this, because I'm tired of hearing people like, well, my cousin got vaccine, and then in Nicki Minaj's case, it was her cousin's best friend, husband's the third cousin, and his balls swelled up. First of all, that was an STD, okay? That was that hoochie mama he was with. And it was that Popeye's fried chicken sandwich he had, okay? And it had nothing to do with the vaccine. So
it wasn't Bojangles.
You cannot sit up here and come in here, eat pork rinds and pig juice and Popeye's, sandwiches, which are made from, chicken that's been processed in, some overseas state that's shipped here in a metal container, and then tell me that's what your problems are coming from. No, your problems are coming from a bad lifestyle, and it didn't have anything to do with the vaccine. There's an expression that was always used in medical school. It's called true, unrelated. Meaning, just because something is true, just because it may have happened, does not mean it's related to the problem you have. And your cousin got vaccinated, and after he was with, LaDonna, whoever he met at the club, maybe his balls did swell up, but it wasn't related to the vaccine. Okay, thank
Lord, you're welcome. Yes, but we are.
Look, I told y'all earlier, I'm here to drop hard truths. If y'all want something sugar-coated, get a donut.
Listen, I agree. But what are we gonna
make sure it's a vegan donut though?
It's hard pressed to get that, but what are we gonna do about how do we get people to? I guess I'm being this moderator. Go ahead, Lee. I'm gonna ask a question that you're gonna ask probably. Go ahead.
Ask your question.
My question was going to be, what do we do? How do we really, change that model of distrust and get out in the community? Because, 40% of African Americans have already said, I'm not doing it. I don't care what happens. I don't trust it. I don't do it. So what advice could we collectively share that would just change their mind? Else, we're doing this. What other things can we do to get flip the switch to a yes? Because we've got to do it.
I think at this point in the year in the game, most people honestly have already made their minds up. That's my general opinion. And I would say initially, in January with the initial strain and whatnot, we didn't know as much about it. Initially, in January when the vaccine first was made available this year, people may have been more hesitant to get the vaccine, but now with the Delta variant, which is more contagious, more transmissible, and the illness seems to be longer. The illness seems to be longer. I think there's more of a pressing issue to protect yourself in every avenue possible. We tend to look at things in silos. I think, there's people that say, okay, if you adopt this diet, that's all you need to do for health. But no, you should do everything. You should exercise. You should eat a whole food plant-based diet. Don't be overweight. Make sure your vitamin D is good. If there's a vaccine available, get the vaccine. Like, do everything. So I don't really understand this one-track mindset of, okay, I'm going to do these 2 things and not do all 5 things that are available. And then if people are still hesitant to get it, that's okay. They don't have to get it if they don't want to. They just have to accept the fact that the risk of getting severe COVID and dying are higher. If they're at peace with that, that's okay. People are free to make choices. I'm not okay with that. And then maybe just educating them about the things that they can control, such as their diet, vitamin D, exercise and things like that. I know a lot of people say, wearing a mask, hand washing. A lot of people are frustrated too because they feel that the vaccine is being pushed and they're saying, well, why aren't they pushing healthy eating and healthy living as much as the vaccine? I mean, we live in a society that, generally speaking, in my opinion, medically, is very pharmacology heavy. It pushes drugs.
Right.
That's just what it does. We know this. So I wouldn't get too upset about that or think that means that the vaccine is harmful or anything like that. That's just the way it is. That's something that maybe we can work on once we're over this pandemic. Let's teach people more about eating healthy. Most people have actually gained weight during the pandemic, eating unhealthy because we're all under a period of stress. So I think it's probably difficult to make a drastic lifestyle change in the middle of a pandemic. That's my personal opinion. But at least, you can have the tools and information to maybe make a difference, before the next one comes around. That's how I feel about it.
All right. Can I jump in here? I got it. Y'all saw me about to jump out of my seat.
Yes.
There's some things we need to understand. Number one, you may do everything right in terms of your diet, but the fact of the matter is that we all have weaknesses in our immune systems, in our bodies that have been bequeathed and handed down to us by our ancestors. We know from the study of epigenetics that what my grandparents ate, what my parents ate, even what my great-grandparents ate, affects my risk for disease. So the fact that I'm doing everything right is going to certainly mitigate some of that risk I've been handed, but it may not be able to undo it all. And the fact is that as human beings, our bodies have been weakened, by accumulated genetic defects. So even doing the whole food plant-based thing, you still have inherited weaknesses in your immune system that being vaccinated can help you overcome. Number one. Number two, the plants that we eat, even if they're organic, they ain't the plants God put in the Garden of Eden. Okay. Even the plants themselves have been changed over time. So again, the point is you got to do the best you can on every front. And then the third thing is, what angers me about these self-righteous vegans is they're talking about, well, I'm not, you need to look, everybody is not going to become plant-based overnight. And even if they did become plant-based today, it's going to take them 3 to 4 months for their body to remake itself. Mm-hmm. So what am I to tell you to them? Oh, no, you deserve to be in danger of dying because you're not plant-based or because you didn't become plant-based soon enough? That is the height of arrogance and privilege and just stupidity. No, we need, as Judy said, we need to use every avenue possible. When I go out driving, I try to drive safe. I don't drink when I drive. I make sure I got good tires and good brakes. I don't, well, I can't lie and say I don't see the speed limit because Dawn will fall off her chair. But
I was going to do that.
I don't see the speed limit when the weather's bad. But I'm saying I try to be safe. But I still want my car to have seat belts, airbags, and a crumple zone because things can happen that you can't control and that you don't expect, and you want to have your safety maximized. And it's the same thing with our health and these vaccines.
Right. And I think that we can still, like both Judy and Milton said, and Helene, we can even though people have already made up their minds, when I'm out in the community all the time, we still have to push the idea of getting the vaccine. That is not enough to wear the mask. That you are increasing your risk factors for death, severe response to COVID if you get it. It might be okay for me and what I do. I have to continue to speak, share that narrative, and then the food, and then the lifestyle, the other 8 factors, not just the food, the other 8 factors, which Judy mentioned, some of them. We've got to stay on the conversation. We can't, because they made up their minds. There's just Milton is the one reason I got my shot. I waited till he got his, and I was being super safe. And then maybe about 3 weeks later, I was like, okay, Milton, I didn't get my shot. He almost like attacked me on the phone, but I wanted to make sure everybody doesn't have an access to a Milton or a Judy, right? So my job is when I get information and I get science, let me go out in the community. Let me go and share it. So we all have to have our alliances with people who are making right decisions as best they know how, and let somebody else carry the ball, because you're in the hospital carrying the ball. You're at the doctor's office carrying the ball. I'm in the community carrying the ball. Helene's in the community carrying the ball. So we have to keep the narrative going about getting the shot, I know you don't want it, but this is why you should get it. I know you don't want to take the meat off the plate, but this is why you should. We have to continue those conversations. This is why you shouldn't eat the Beyond Meat all the time, because it's full of fat, right? We have to have those tough conversations all the time. And everybody's got their space, and we should all be actively doing what doctors do every day, which is trying to save lives.
Can we talk about some common myths about the vaccine?
Sure.
Because one of the most common is that it will impact or change your DNA. And I try to explain to people, take a cell biology class, because what you will find is that messenger RNA is made in the nucleus, and then it goes out into the regular part or cytoplasm of the cell. It never goes back into the nucleus where your DNA is. So these messenger RNA fragments that are in the vaccine never go into the part of the cell where your DNA is located. They do not affect or impact or change your DNA. Second myth I've heard, it's going to affect my fertility. Again, they did an actual study. There is absolutely no evidence that happens. This does not impact the ovaries or the testes. It does not change or impact your fertility or your ability to get pregnant. So all of those things are myths. They're not true. People don't need to be concerned about that. And my favorite one was that it was going to make you give off electricity. I wish that was true, because it would cut down on my power bill, but it's not. Okay.
And don't forget microchips. Don't forget no microchips and no microchips.
Take the microchips.
No magnets.
I can't do
Judy,
that.
Go, Judy. Go. No microchips. No magnets.
No magnets.
Yes, none of that is in the vaccine.
No,
right.
It's in your phone. Just get rid of your cell phone if you're really concerned about those things.
Right.
it's it's so interesting. I've been very fortunate to have Milton on my cell phone as well. And we've spoken even back in November 2020, I believe. We had like a long conversation, and being friends with you on Facebook has been very fortunate because the Sustain NAC, that was already vitamin D, vitamin C, my B12. I added
Yep.
these things. The Moline I added to our daily thing because it's lungs, help with the lungs. And we've had very many conversations about what happens in the hospital. We had the conversation before anybody else knew, and I imparted this wisdom on so many about the oxygen levels. So many of my friends would get COVID, and I said, "Do you have an oximeter? You need an oximeter. Like, you need to get one from Amazon, you need to get it delivered, you need to go get it now because you need to check your oxygen level." Because what was happening is they weren't checking the oxygen levels, and people literally sitting on their beds, this is what you told me, sitting in their beds on their phones and then dead like an hour later because no one could tell their oxygen level was getting depleted because they were just normal. And then suddenly they weren't. And then you suddenly learn you need to keep the oximeter on their finger all the time because you can't. One of the things about COVID is it's masking things that you typically would present, but it's not presenting the way it typically would, which is what a deadly virus kind of does. Its goal is to kill you or harm you or maim you. So it did a great job. And that was my conversation of November 2020, which carried forward to a lot of people, Milton, a lot of people. We have oximeters, we have a blood pressure cuff, we have like all these things that happened during COVID to make sure that we're okay. We're in a trial. That's one thing that's different about us, which is very interesting to walk through and do these events and be around thousands of people, is we have Novavax in us. Nobody else has that except for the 25,000 other people in the trial. And we're testing it so that when you get the option to get Novavax, which I hope you do, because I think it's the best one on the planet, because I've been around thousands of people since August, and I've tested each time. And every time, the last few times, I was like, this one's it. We're gonna test positive for COVID, but we don't test positive. And we've had a myriad of things. I was on the phone with Milton as I was going to the ER because I was Dr. Priya in Atlanta and Milton were my sounding boards. I didn't want to go. I was that stubborn person saying, I'm exhausted. I cannot believe how tired I am. I was in tears. I was so tired. And Priya and my oximeter was 85 and I freaked out. I was like, Stephen was like, you're going to go to sleep. You're not going to wake up. I was like, well, but then the other one still had me at like 95. So we have two. And because we didn't know, Priya was like, because you don't know which one's right, you should go to the ER. And on the way to the ER, Milton called and he was like, well, do you have stairs? And I was like, yep. And he's like, well, lay your baseline. And I was like, look, I can't run upstairs right now. So he was like, go to the ER. So here I am, go to the ER in the middle of a pandemic. And I was like, this is not the place I want to be. And it's always late at night because, emergent care is not available. And I had stomach virus. Somehow, some way, masked up, barely going out. I think Stephen got it actually. Gave it to me. And I kind of go about a week later and he had the similar symptoms, but I was just like, I was in tears. I was so tired. All symptoms of COVID, right? But I wasn't stomach virus that they saw on the CAT scan. They were like, saw it coming. So I was glad, but not everyone has that bat line to like these incredible physicians that will call you back or text you back, like be like, here's what we think you should do. And I'm glad that I went because I don't know, I would have figured it out probably a couple of days later, but thank you for your advice, for being there, being part of Judy, being part of our community, extending community. I mean, it's just you know, it's invaluable, and I want everyone else to know this and get vaccinated and understand what's real, and protect yourselves 1,000,000%, because one of the points here is that even though you're vaccinated, you can still make somebody else sick, and if you're not vaccinated, you can still make somebody else sick if you're asymptomatic. You just don't know. That's why we talked about holding our breath when we walk through a group of people, because I don't know if I'm close enough to you to be able to breathe your air. I want to put a mask on inside or out. Outside I feel safer, but that's just, I want things to be normal, but it's endemic. So welcome to the lives of living with another virus like the flu, and getting your annual booster, maybe a couple of them. Welcome to lives of making masks normalized. Welcome to lives of making sure you have hand sanitizer and washing your hands, because you can pick up COVID from touching a doorknob, but you can also pick up the flu and the common cold. Having less of that is not a bad thing. But we all need to do this for each other, no matter what community you're in. But in the people of color community, there's more hesitancy, and which is why we brought this together, because I see it. It's around me. I talk about it. I get unfriended. So, and how do we reach them? We can do more. And we have to, because they're going to get sick, and they're going to die, or they're going to be long haulers. And that's like the last thing any of us want.
Yes.
Then they're already.
Let me just say this real quick. I really want to, number one, everything you said was wonderful. And I really want to underscore what you were saying about looking out for other people, because the thing that I was terrified of for most of the year, I mean, I felt like, I'm plant-based. I'm pretty healthy. I feel like I would be able to survive this, but I was terrified that I was going to bring it home and kill my mother. And that's why, as soon as I felt the vaccines were safe, I got vaccinated, and then I made sure she got vaccinated. And so we gotta, as you said, not only do it for ourselves, but we got to do it for other people, to protect each other, and that cannot be overstated. And thank you for saying that.
No, thank you. So that's an hour and 2 minutes. Unbelievable. Any final words? It flies by. Any final, and there's so much more that can be spoken about, but we also want people to watch the whole thing. So right. Is there anything else, Judy, Dawn, Milton, that you want to say to close out?
Yeah, I just wanted to share just experience, as a hospitalist in the hospital. There's a lot of information going around, but if anyone can listen and believe what I'm saying, what my colleagues are saying, and what we're seeing, because I asked them, I have not seen a person that is young and healthy vaccinated in the hospital on oxygen. The only people that I have seen vaccinated requiring oxygen are people with either comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, obesity. That's it. I have not seen a young, healthy, vegan, plant-based vaccinated person on oxygen.
Not at all.
So the game changer, the leverage is getting the vaccine. The Delta variant has changed the situation a little bit. We were initially in the pandemic, we were seeing maybe one person in the household have COVID, but the other family members didn't. Now it's like it's routine. I'm seeing the couple both in the ER at the same time with COVID, the whole family in the hospital at the same time with COVID. So regardless of what you're seeing on YouTube or whoever's spreading, information, and it's false information, unfortunately, it's just not true, and it's just not reality. So if anybody has any questions, I guess you're going to share our social, they can reach out to us individually. I don't know. Can I share that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah, I'm at the Plant-Based MD, Judy Brangman, on Instagram, Facebook. Happy to share any questions, information that you may have. I get the vaccine hesitancy. Me, I was kind of like, is it really going to work? Is it really effective? I was never really doubting whether it was going to cause harm, because I was more concerned about the actual harm that I was seeing from COVID. So I kind of weighed the two, and I felt that taking the vaccine, the benefits outweighed the potential risk of it causing any potential harm.
What I would say is that COVID, what I've seen during COVID this last year has been without question the most traumatizing experience of my medical career. I've never seen so many people dying so quickly, and in such a inexorable fashion. You come to work, you start your shift, you see a patient, they look fine. Middle of the shift, the nurse is calling you because the patient's SATs are going down. You walk in, the patient's dusky colored, their SATs are in the 80s or high 70s, and they're telling you, I don't feel short of breath, but they literally look like they are dying. And then before the shift is over, they're intubated in the ICU, and if they're lucky, they may make it to the next day, but very often, particularly if they're older or have comorbidities, they die. So this is no joke. It is really real. It's nothing to mess around with. And again, the last thing, and we don't have time to go into this, but we can steer you to other resources. Vaccines train your immune system how to respond to an infectious agent like COVID without getting the actual disease. So in many ways, they're actually more natural than taking medications. And so you have nothing to fear from the vaccines. I would steer people to my website, Dr. Milton Mills, plantbasednation.com. That's just Dr. Milton Mills, plantbasednation.com. I have the list of COVID supplements that I recommend for everyone that you take, continuous, from now until Jesus comes back, and get your vaccine, and God bless, and hopefully we're going to be okay.
And I'll just add, kind of supplement what Judy and Milton said. I understand in communities of color why there's the trust issue, but you can't let that dictate your risk, the risks that are happening here, and the deaths that are happening. We don't have the opportunity to see what Judy and Milton see every day, which is the death and the trauma. But we do see it in our own families. We know somebody. Everybody knows somebody who's lost someone. I do. I've known people, and I myself have lost people in COVID. Stop thinking it can't be you. You already have a diet that's not healthy, most likely. And even if you had a healthy diet, Judy had COVID. Stop putting risk
and I know
risking other people.
Plant-based people who had it, yeah.
Right, and stop risking. So stop risking your life and stop risking other people's lives. And just like the seatbelt analogy. Be safe, because safety is always better than risk at any time. And in communities of color, I do get the distrust. I completely get it. But we have to get past distrust and get back to healing. And we got to stop politicizing COVID and look at getting to the root cause and still vegecating in the communities and getting the truth out and getting to the grassroots nature of all this, which is really reaching back and teaching and changing minds.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel very fortunate to know all of you. So and to be able to pull this together, and Dawn and I had a shaky start. Dawn and I had some of this going on, and I ran into her in Greenville, and it has been amazing ever since. And I walked past her in Greenville in a restaurant, and I went outside and said, Stephen, that's Dawn. He was like, who? And I was like, Dawn. He was like, oh, that Dawn? And I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go talk to her. How could I not? She's here. I walked up to Dawn and I was like, you don't know who I am, but I apologize. So, I mean, and that started, this amazingness that will continue to go forward, because we all need to work together.
Yep.
And we all need to facilitate change, and we all need to care enough about more than just animals, but other humans, to make sure that when the next variant comes, which, we can help not, but when it does, you're protected, or you take the next thing that will protect you, because there's not a lot of choices. It's like death, sickness, mitigating. And that's the word. That should be the word of the hour. Mitigation. Nothing's 100%. Birth control is not 100%, but you still use it. It's not 100%, but you still use it to not have some offspring that you don't want to have. People have babies because yes, yep, and they still break. So don't not do something that's 90 to 100%, 90 to 99% effective, because this might be the time that it doesn't work. That's stupid. That's it.
Yeah, and all I can say is that you know, it's not surprising that you and Dawn had a time period of getting in sync, because you're both very powerful, outspoken women, and it's like bringing two running horses together. It's going to take a while for them to get in sync, but once they're in sync, they're more powerful together, and that's what we see.
Thank you. Well, that's awesome. Well, I wish all of you a fantastic night. And Judy, maybe I'll see you this weekend. You know, there's a Vegfest in town. Not mine, but there is one.
Oh, I didn't know about it. You have to tell me later.
That's part of the problem, is that nobody knows about it. It's because it's not mine. So I promote ours, but yeah. So everyone, I'm going to put you back in the green room and close this out. Here we go. Well, thank you once again for joining Virtual Vegfest Live. I really, really appreciate it. You can go to virtualvegfest.com and you can enter our contest, which, you know, contest tab 7 prize packs, which is amazing. And thank you to Terra Seed and all our other sponsors. And we're back on Sunday 2 times this week. 2 times. Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Spooky Cookie Demo with Kathy Hester. It's an annual thing for us. Second time we're doing it. That's what makes it annual. Lots and lots of fun. Always influences what you want to have for dinner. Then we have Monday morning, 8 a.m., Wake Up and Yoga with Kim. Monday evening at 7 p.m., Fireside Chat with Kimberly. Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, a week from Wednesday, actually, is the Vegan Stew, which is every Wednesday except for the first Wednesday of the month. This Wednesday at 7 p.m., you can see Coach Kayla and get all your medical or health questions answered very simply. And then I don't know when I'm back because I need to set a schedule. So have a great one. Thank you for joining us. Please, please share this so that those that you know who are hesitant can get the facts from real people on YouTube. Go figure. Isn't that crazy that on YouTube you can actually get real information? This is one of them. So have a good night. Bye, everyone.